It's the end of the month. It's the end of the quarter. It's the end of the year. Sales aren't where they need to be. We spend so much time thinking and focusing on customer acquisition. That dollar should keep on going. And that's where Lifecycle is so important.
Either A, you're not getting someone to convert right away, or B, even if someone does convert, how do you turn that person into a consistent, lifelong customer?
Sometimes people think it just ends, click, website, purchase, but
on today's episode, we'll be talking to Kat Covert. Kat is Senior Lifecycle Marketing Manager at U.S. News & World Report. She has a vast experience in lifecycle marketing, and we have some great topics in store for you. First, we'll be talking about discounting, how people get on the discount hamster wheel when it comes to lifecycle marketing, and how we can get off of it in order to really make successful campaigns. Then we'll be talking a little bit about technology and the importance of aligning marketing, IT, and product during the planning and implementation phase of a marketing automation platform to make sure you're getting the most value out of the platform. Finally, we'll be talking about all the various touch points that come into play when it comes to lifecycle marketing. Kat's going to give us her recommendation on the next touch point you should be thinking about, and it might surprise you what she says. We're really excited to talk to her. Let's get started. Kat, we are so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming.
yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
As you know, we talk a lot about the post-click experience here on Everything Clicks. We get to talk about that very broadly, but today I'm excited because we get to talk about it a bit more specifically in terms of that life cycle element of the post-click experience. So most people very much think about, okay, I click on the ad, I get to the website, it's getting me to convert. But a lot of times, either A, you're not getting someone to convert right away. People need multiple touches to be able to make that decision. How do you begin to nurture? How do you begin to build that relationship? Or B, even if someone does convert, how do you turn that person not just into a one-time customer, but into a consistent kind of lifelong customer, right? How do you begin to build that loyalty? So that's really where life cycle marketing comes into play. So that means there's a connection there, right? There's a connection between all that money that's being spent upfront to drive that initial visit and then how you're maximizing that investment. From your standpoint as a lifecycle marketer, how do you think about that investment?
Yeah, I mean, we spend so much time thinking and focusing on customer acquisition, and that comes with, all the work on brand, all the work on voice, all the work on creative, and you spend the money, you go to the channels, you try to get people, and then if you're not doing anything with a follow-up for that, it just feels like investment wasted. That dollar should keep on going, and that's where Lifecycle is so important. So I'm so glad I get to talk about that today because sometimes people think it just ends, click, website, purchase, but there's so much more than that.
That kind of leads me into thinking about how people tend to use Lifecycle, right? So people think, first of all, just to think about it as just kind of email, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But they send out these emails, they get people to subscribe, they send out these email communications, and so many of them are just really focused on the discount. It's a chance to basically send out a nice colored flyer to say, hey, save 50% today. Hey, buy one, get one today. And I mean, literally, with a lot of these brands, almost every day, sometimes you're getting an email that's talking about selling something at some discount, offering some promo code. I'm sure you've seen this in your career, and I'm sure you have much more intelligent ways of thinking about this than perhaps a lot of other brands do. How do you think about using discounts as a more of a tool than it is kind of just this big mallet to kind of beat people over the heads with?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like when you think about the evolution of advertising, I started out in print advertising and have seen the evolution. And I think we haven't changed a lot of those behaviors since print. You would either do two things, right? You would say, big sale happening this weekend, make sure you come in and get your big sale. Or when you go shopping, when you would get there, they would like hand out a flyer, be like, hey, today, special sale. Well, we've kind of applied that same methodology to marketing. So we're still saying, hey, come see us because we have a big sale. We're not talking about the other reasons. You should come be loyal to our brand or come check out our brand when we talk about like value prop. Why should the customer come shop with us? We're starting with sale. So one, you're going to get people addicted to sale if that's the first thing you're talking about. And the power of Lifecycle and just data, this all the backbone of this, remember, is all going to be data, customer data, and behavior, is really thinking about segmentation. So if you can get someone to come to your site based on the ad that doesn't talk anything about discounts, well, why would you have anything on your site that mentions discounts? You'd want to make sure that any discount site crawler codes things you've gone to just unique discount codes, so no one can just hit a button like the Chase shopping app or whatever and get a discount. Like, you have to make it a very unified experience, and it just requires a lot of thought. So if your, incoming message is no discount, but it's talking about come see this great new product that solves X, then your advertising needs to focus on what that X solving is. And that's what your messaging should all be about. When we only bring people in because of discounting, we're going to talk about it later too, the hamster wheel. Like, you're never going to get yourself off the hamster wheel of discounts. So then it's thinking about user behavior. Did they come because we said, this was the reason, but they didn't shop? So a great follow-up message to them would be like, if you were able to get their email somehow through a capture experience, like, hey, why didn't you buy with us today? And trying to get some survey data to understand, was it price? And if that's so, then maybe some type of discounting strategy would start playing into that life cycle journey for them. But that's what Lifecycle should allow you to do, is start experimenting with the different, data points the user's showing you and like why you should follow up with specific messaging. And we'll talk about like my other favorite channel, which is syndicating back to all your social media apps. But like, you can use this data in real time to like start educating and like making more robust campaigns to get people back outside of discounts.
The thing that really stood out to me in what you just said was you hit back the person and you kind of say, like, why didn't you buy today? Was it price? And I think so often as marketers, we get so quickly kind of fixated on price, and we think we're fixated on it because everyone else must be fixated on it because that's all that matters. But obviously that's not the case, because people buy Mercedes-Benz every day, right? People will go to the more expensive supermarket. They will take the more expensive flight. So obviously there's a value element to that. It's just we tend to ignore it very quickly and go straight to price, thinking that's the only lever that we can pull, where there are these other levers that certainly can be pulled and often are more powerful than price, right? If you're kind of using the right kind of psychological triggers to get people to make those decisions that you want them to make. So that kind of makes me think then, why do companies, do you think, get on this hamster wheel of discounts? Like, why do you think that ends up happening?
It's the end of the month. It's the end of the quarter. It's the end of the year. Sales aren't where they need to be. You know, I see it all the time. And you can start off the strategy in January with a whole new idea. You're going to do this. We're not going to have coupons anymore. But, you've already created the drug, so to speak. And it's hard to get people off that. And like, believe me, I'm a discount shopper. Like, I will never say don't run discounts. I'm a discount shopper who buys more when there's discounts. So it's thinking about, what's the reason for the discount? Is it just because like you have to make the quick sale today? But remember, that quick sale is short term. Long term, are you eroding the value of the product? But I think it's just that. It's companies so focused on short-term wins, short-term goals. I get it. We've worked for public, we've worked for private companies, right? You have other people to speak to. So sometimes it's just get the sale done. We got to meet these numbers. And email somehow always seems to be the free lever that people think they can pull to help get those
Free.
discounts. Yeah, free. But yeah, I think it's very hard. And if you're at a company that already does this, like, good luck talking anybody off the ledge from it. It's an addiction. And like, I don't even know that I have the answer. It's just about repeating yourself, talking about brand, talking about value. Like, if you're a discount brand like Kohl's, like, I think people know that like you're always going to have sales. And I think I mentioned this to you before, and I brought this up in several conversations, but JCPenney a couple of years ago tried to go away from discount strategy and said, oh, we're just going to set the low price of a top is $19.99 instead of saying it's $40 and half off all the time. But their sales dropped, like, because that was the environment they cultivated with shoppers. Like, people who shopped at JCPenney's wanted deals. It always felt like they were getting a deal. Well, if you say something's $19.99, it doesn't feel like a deal, it feels like full price. Um, so yeah, it's really about like changing your whole brand strategy, and it will take a long time. It's maybe saying goodbye to some customers and then, creating those strategies with the new customers that might mean short-term losses, for a quarter or two. Um, and then, do you have the persistence to and the guts to stay in the game to get away from discounts? Now, if you're a brand starting out, you know, blank canvas, go for it.
I know what you mean. And I loved because we have talked about that JC Penney example before, and I love it because it's such an instructional example because again, we talk about marketers getting fixated on price, but that example shows it's not about price. Like in that example, right? JC Penney gave the exact same price. Like we're now charging day in, day out, $19.99 for this. That's how much it was with the discount. Like we were giving you 50% off $40 to get to $19.99. And now we're just charging you $19.99 and now you don't want it because it's not about the actual price. It's about the perception that you have, right, that you've put in my brain. And because now you're not feeding me this drug of perception, you're not triggering this psychological element. Now I feel like, well, I'm not getting anything special here. So like, why should I buy it, right? So it's a great example to use to kind of say like, look, you're stuck on this discount hamster wheel because you think it's all about price. But the data shows and the research shows it's not all about price. That's not what it's about. It's about these other things. So let's kind of shift your mentality and let's start to think about these other things. And you mentioned it earlier beautifully. Data is the best way to start doing that because you get to understand your customers and those audience segments and which ones are heavily influenced by discounts and which ones aren't really using discounts that much, right? How did they come into the relationship with the brand, right? And maybe that's the audience you start with and say, well, let's start to wean these people off discounts because they didn't come here initially because of a discount. Maybe they've bought more consistently, not using your promo code or not using a discount. We've seen that pattern of behavior. So maybe let's start with that group of people and kind of, has a starting point to say, let's wean them off the discount, see how they react to that. And then maybe we can get some learnings from that we can expand to other audiences. So yeah, I think there's a lot of wonderful ways to do that. And I appreciate you kind of mentioning that. So you alluded to this as you were talking through that. People think about Lifecycle very much as email or email and SMS, but because it truly is a life cycle, right? You're trying to build this loyal relationship with the customer. You have to think beyond that into other touch points. What are the other channels and touch points that you think about when you think about Lifecycle that have been effective?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think in some ways, we harp on this in the corporate world because we say one person shouldn't have to do all these things. Like that's not how marketing works. But when you think about small businesses, a lot of times there is only the one person, or maybe they're lucky and they get to hire another person. So in some ways, that person is having to think about the entire life cycle. And then if you get lucky, you grow up and you get to go work at a corporate gig that has silos and everyone's doing their own thing. And that's actually where the disconnect starts to happen, right? Because you're now taking each channel as a segment and saying, well, what works best for this channel? And we're removing the customer from the equation. So we're now no longer saying what works best for the customer holistically, what works best for SEM, what works best for email, what works best for SMS. And so I find that to be really interesting when I talk to small business owners is they get it because they want to have the form and the pop-up on the screen to initially get email capture, right? Like technically, Lifecycle, like you have to have email capture to even like start talking about those other channels or phone capture, right? But Lifecycle begins before that. And that's where the disconnect is right now in a lot of strategies. Everyone thinks it's, customer acquisition, then Lifecycle. But like customer acquisition is Lifecycle. It's literally the first stage. It's the first stage. And so it's having to think that whole thing through. So yes, email and SMS are technically like your last resort channels, right, of Lifecycle. So you think about the beginning. So paid media, TV, OTT, brand, like your brand is the beginning of Lifecycle. So you have to think all the way through. A lot of the complications I have in my current roles is like brand wants to be one thing, but conversion shows another thing. And so how do we get that information back to each other? So yeah, that's where it all has to be. So for me, it's definitely, even if you don't have control of, I guess, customer acquisition, right? Then it's like, at least if you can have some control of on-site capture, personalization. And like when we talk about the discount wheel, a lot of it starts there, right? It's give us your email for 10% off. Well, we've already begun the relationship of your email is going to give discounts. So, like, again, disconnect from the whole customer journey. So I actually start leaning towards the space of like lifecycle marketers controlling at least anything that happens post ad click to the website on-site personalization. If you're using the right MarTech stack, you should be able to start having control of that. And then of course your, mid-journey messaging, email, SMS, direct mail. And then I think the most important channel is you're going to be platform I use, it's called syndications, but whatever that channel is that allows you to push your data back to any of your paid media, because you want to complete the life cycle. And that's what we're missing out on. We're just saying end result, email, boom, conversion. But no, like we need to recycle that to the beginning. If we think of life cycle as a circle, like we're not completing the circle. And so what we're missing so much is that passing the data back from that email, SMS, direct mail result back to the acquisition strategy where it all began. So that's what I think about when I think about all the channels you can be using for lifecycle. It's actually everything.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. And I mean, the way you spoke about it made complete logical sense, right? Because it's about the life of the customer, right? Which involves every single touch point of the customer. And once essentially they've entered into your world, right? Your brand world, but that initial click, whether that was the search result, whether that was the initial ad or whatever that may be, once they've entered into that world, from that moment forward, they're telling you something, right? That every click they make, every product they look at, every search they make on the site, they're providing additional information that you can leverage um, both passively on the website as they navigate around, but to your point, also actively by pushing that back out via syndication, via SMS, via email, via direct mail, right? Because that now it's not just this blind kind of, let's throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. I'm throwing messaging back at you or even ads back at you based on information that you have explicitly or implicitly given me that I didn't have before, right? I'm showing you that pair of shoes you added to your cart when you're navigating through Facebook because that was the pair of shoes you had in your cart, right? You were interested in that pair of shoes, right? So all of that really does play into the life cycle. Um, do you how do you kind of take that into account as people start to look at, it used to be, I'm not sure it still is today. I would argue it's not. It used to be when people kind of went shopping for tech stacks, it was very much like we need to find an ESP, we need to find an email service provider. I think today it's very much more we need to find a marketing automation platform, right? And it's that switch of mindset. Um, have you seen the market kind of shift to kind of be like the old school kind of email service providers are kind of essentially kind of gone, and now it's like, how do we expand it to be this marketing automation platform?
Yes, I agree with you on the level of I think the platforms know they have to be marketing automation platforms, but I think there's companies that still don't understand that that doesn't mean just having an ESP or something. I've done some consulting work where it's like there's still this huge disconnect of like, oh, CDP. Yeah, but like, do you know why you need a CDP and like the reason why you need data unification from a marketing perspective? Again, it's not just email or just SMS. It needs to be the whole thing. But I think if you don't know what's available, it's hard to have those conversations. And it becomes like really high level when you're in like an RFP process. I've seen a lot of people struggle with like the right questions to ask those providers. We've been in the game a while. We know what's around, and so I can see through sales pitches pretty clearly. But everything sounds great. Oh, like yeah, we'll take all your data and put it all together, and you just have to hit a couple buttons and it works. And it's like it's a little more complicated than that. And you still need to have people who know what they're doing. But I would say, unfortunately, people are still thinking about life cycle as email, at least now a little bit more SMS than 5 years ago, and then maybe like push if we're lucky. But there's, we're there's just so much more that could be done. And that's what I'm most passionate about, is trying to explore those other channels for companies.
Of course, if we're talking about Lifecycle and we're talking about these different tools, everyone and their mom has some AI component to their tool now, right? Because that's the hot thing, right? Like you gotta have AI. Like just
Yep.
that's the buzzword right now, right? So much so that I'm kind of tired of hearing about it, but that's another story for another episode.
Yes.
Regardless of my feelings on it, right? AI is powerful, right? If leveraged and used in the right way, if you have the data structured in the right way to be able to leverage AI, how have you seen AI effectively used? And conversely, perhaps if you're able to speak to it, how have you seen it ineffectively used or try to be ineffectively used? Has you seen kind of AI playing a bigger role in life cycle?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think a couple platforms, they're incorporating AI because they know we need to incorporate it. And AI should absolutely be a time saver. Yeah, I'm over it too. Like now live in fear every day that we're all going to be irrelevant by next year, right? But we'll see. Um, and it's just AI should be helping us make things faster, accelerate testing, accelerate findings. And I think that's still where a lot of marketing automation platforms have a big gap, is serving me, the customer of the tool, with quick analysis of campaigns. A lot of platforms are still made to be connected to, Looker or SQL or Tableau, and good luck to your BI team for figuring things out, where it's like, well, if you have all the data, why can't you just spit that out for me? So I think there are a couple tools that are doing that. Bloomreach comes to mind with their analysis. I think they made investments in the right place. Um, and then tools like Iterable, like they did investment in helping create journeys. But to me, it's like, I don't know, was that okay, great. Like you can help me build a journey, but I can build a journey in 2 minutes. Like that doesn't take any time for me. But maybe some other inexperienced marketers, that's a big time saver. So like, does it help, scale faster from ground up? Maybe. And then a lot of them are doing subject line testing or like help with content testing, which in some ways I'm like, ugh, like that feels so silly. But Blue Shift, I would say, has launched a subject line AI optimizer that I was poo-pooing, and I've been using it, and it actually is working well. I don't want to say it's working well, but it is. But it's what it's doing is saving time. So it's like I don't have to like go in and look at the results and be like, yeah, that test won by this, and like let's do this, and now I have to come up with another subject line. It's kind of taking out the mundane tasks, which I actually really dislike about my job, and making those things easier. Right. And so it's still using like the original content that we've all created and the strategies that we've thought about. It's just amplifying it and helping us achieve results faster, which I think is what everyone wants. Like we want to scale faster. We shouldn't be taking 3 months to figure out like the blue button worked better on the template. So yeah, I think AI is great. But I think what we should hopefully start seeing more of is back to the reporting analysis, kind of like identifying cohorts, like we talked about with discounts. Like, how do you even start building a cohort and understanding, like, if you're an entry level marketer, your mind's probably already blown anyway on like having to build segmentation and think about if then statements and putting people down the journey. So maybe I take back what I said about journey building. Maybe that helps with directional if then analysis. But again, it's like 15 years in my brain, hard to get rid of. Take that AI. But like, hey, we noticed so and so is doing this. Like maybe there's a segment here and something, like if it starts suggesting things because it's seeing patterns, I think that is where it's really going to start, accelerating. And those are going to be the divide in tech that everyone's offering. Like those are the things I'm going to be looking for. Is it helping me, crunch numbers faster, build new opportunities and cohorts? Like simple copy editors, whatever. But the real detailed stuff, like that's what's going to make or break the platforms in the next year.
100%. I can't agree with you more. I really think the power in AI from a marketing standpoint is really on the, like you said, the analysis and the intelligence that it can bring faster, right? Because we talked just earlier in this conversation around, sending a survey, right, to your customers or some feedback and saying, hey, why didn't you buy today? Was it price? Was it, you know, was the wrong, didn't find your size, didn't find your color, right? Whatever the case is. And as you get that kind of feedback, back, and it's invaluable, but it takes time for someone to kind of go through, especially if it's open-ended, and kind of say, okay, what is it our customers are trying to tell us? And then therefore, based on that information, what are the insights we can glean from that? And then what decisions should we make?
Right. I always joke that I'm a marketer, not a mathematician. But I the company wants me to be a mathematician, not even that. They want me to be a data scientist. And so it's like, if AI can help me be that, I love that.
More power to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just like tell me, like, yep, I looked at, 500 responses and people are basically saying this.
Yeah, I should have listened to my math teacher way more in high school. I definitely did not. And I got a C in stats in college. So
Because you said you'd never need it. So like, why
I
would I
know.
even worry about it?
I'm like, marketing's just making pretty images. What are they talking about?
Exactly. And talking about that, right? Leveraging AI along with a lot of other functionality and a great, modern marketing automation stack. It's not as easy as you mentioned as kind of going in and just saying, hey, just install this thing and kind of push the button, right? It's like, it's not going to work like that. They sell it like that, but it's never that easy. It's never that straightforward. What do you think are those key considerations that a marketer needs to know to take into account, or work with IT or the data team or whomever to take into account to say, hey, this is a solid implementation of this platform that's going to allow us to do the kinds of things we want to do?
I cannot stress enough to make sure to ask anyone's solutions teams how it integrates with your current tech stack, because that will lead your entire conversation, or it should lead your entire conversation. And I know sometimes it's like marketers get stuck with like, well, you go find something. It's like, okay, well, I found what I like. And then you go talk to engineering and they're like, we can't support any of that. So now it doesn't matter what I like. They're not going to do what I want them to do because it's going to take 6 months to fix whatever is broken or missing or whatever. So it's so important to just bring everyone to the table in the beginning. Like, you need to have product engineering, platform marketing all together, and write out your list of like, what do we have to have? And then your nice to haves. And then absolutely make them go through the roadmap of what's coming down for their year of development. And I would also softly demand um, to talk to customers that are currently using the tool, because a sales pitch is never going to tell you the real deal. And so you definitely go out there and find real life users and ask. But yeah, it all comes down to, I harp on everyone I ever consult. If it doesn't match 75% of your current stack as far as easy integrations, and not only that, two-way integrations, not just one way, just because it might look fancy, or you're the founder of your company's like, oh, like this is the best thing that's out right now, like, you'll need to tell them why, and why their life will be very painful if you try to pursue something that doesn't integrate with what you have today.
It's funny how many times we come in and we see people who have like robust tools, like enterprise level tools, great functionality, and they think the solution to the problem is, oh, we need to add another tool.
Right.
And it's just like, it's probably not your problem, right? And I'd say 95% of the time, and this is where we kind of spend our time most of the time, it's a lack of alignment between marketing, product, and IT. And because you guys aren't in alignment and you're not speaking the same language, you're not able to set things up, both from a process standpoint and an integration standpoint, to do the kinds of things that the tool already allows you to do. So you're using like 20% of the horsepower of this thing, and maybe some other salesperson has come in and said, well, that's because you need a CDP, or that's because you need a, XYZ, or whatever the case is. And I understand it, because the job of those salespeople is to make it sound like their tool is the solution to every problem. So I get it. That's how they make their pay. But it's rarely the case, right? More often than not, it's really about saying the internal teams aren't on the same page. You guys aren't speaking the same language. You're not in alignment. And once you get in alignment and you maximize the tool, then you could start talking about having conversations of saying, let's bring in these other tools to accelerate what we're already doing well, as opposed to saying we're going to bring in this other tool to fix a problem that maybe doesn't quite exist yet. And that happens again, probably 90% of the time of situations we kind of come into. And it sounds like you've, experienced that yourself in your career and even in your consulting work.
Absolutely. Yeah, it could be the best platform in the world, but if you have to do a manual integration to work with one of the tools that you use, you're basically already giving yourself a handicap with the tool, because that means then someone needs to create alerts for data flows and just understanding, in and out. You're already creating, strain on the resources you currently have to make sure that new integration is working properly. So I cannot stress enough into even just two-way integration with team. When I talk about that, if people don't know what I'm talking about, is like if you have a data warehouse like BigQuery or Databricks or Snowflake, will it push it to your CDP or marketing automation tool and also push the data back to your warehouse? Or is it one way? And a lot of them are still one way, where it will only take from your warehouse into the CDP, but then not spit anything information wise back. And that's kind of what creates monolithic data problems, or having to create that, pipeline back. And again, anytime you have to create a pipeline, even if they are like, oh, it's S3 or there's a REST, you just connect it via REST API. It's like, yeah, but someone still has to like maintain and make sure those are happening. I can't tell you how many times I've gone in a week later and been like, I don't think we've been getting data on this for a week. And because I finally had time to look at a campaign, oops, and was like, 0 cents, that doesn't make any sense. Well, now, where if you had a two-way, usually that is an alert that's already pretty much built in. So yeah, cannot stress enough. You have to make sure it already works with what you have, because you'll never be happy with any tool. Doesn't matter if it's the best or the cheapest or whatever, especially if it's the cheapest. Good luck with that. It won't be the cheapest by the time you're done integrating, that's for sure.
So let's kind of wrap up on this note. So, you're talking to a marketer, enterprise level, B2C, they're currently leveraging emails, but they're not really fully leveraging their marketing automation platform for these other channels, right? These other opportunities to really kind of expand the way they can talk to their customers across the life cycle. So, okay, they've decided, tomorrow is what, July 1st. We're going to start this quarter and we're going to bring in a new channel, a new touch point into the lifecycle world. What is the touch point that you'd recommend them starting with, and how do you think they get started with that?
Yeah, I know. Everyone's probably going to think I'm going to say like SMS or push or even direct mail, because I am a direct mail fangirl. But my suggestion, I've alluded to this earlier, is the syndication, the automatic pass back of data back to your paid acquisition channels. Every marketing tool at this point, I believe, has access to sync your Facebook, your Meta ads, your SEM ads, and so much more. Even if you have email, that's fine. At the end of your journey, you should have the ability to, do wait 30 minutes. Did they purchase or not? If not, they go into, your conversion bucket. That conversion bucket filters in real time to your paid ad lists for either suppression or lookalikes. We talked about extending that dollar, right? That's how you extend the acquisition dollar. You're using that data, that flow, and real-time data to say, okay, we got the conversion. I haven't done social in a long time, and I know they have conversion pixels and stuff too on your site. So like there is some real-time element there, but if you don't have it all connected, like why not? It's like literally the easiest thing that you can launch today to start helping your ad dollars go longer. And it's more what you'll start to realize, it's cost savings on that original dollar. You're not going to keep spending money for users on the same thing. It gives you the ability to have more dynamic ads. So, okay, they bought. There's nothing that irritates me more, and probably every marketer on LinkedIn, when when you buy something and you go back to like Facebook or whatever, because I'm a millennial and I still use Facebook, but and I see an ad for the same thing I just bought. And I'm like, I literally just bought this. Like, come on. And that's how I know they're not using Lifecycle marketing automation correctly, right? Or they only have daily uploads, which is no excuse in my opinion. But And so activate that today. Don't even worry about SMS. SMS is expensive. Like people think SMS, oh, it's great. It can have high conversion rates, sure, but it's actually a really costly channel, especially if you start having, when you talk about SMS and segments and stuff like that, like it's a lot. Push sometimes can be expensive too, depending on your volume and things like that. I still think direct mail probably best converting channel that people really need to consider. So if you, for some reason, don't have paid social or third party, then direct mail is my next answer. But activate your syndications, third party audiences, whatever it is today.
That's an awesome answer. And I just, just to kind of echo it and kind of bang that drum more, it's the power of that to me is really in that suppressions, right? It's just like, why is this still running if the person's already done the thing that we wanted them to do by doing that? And I think marketers sometimes don't think about that because it's like, LinkedIn or Meta or whomever already has that information, via their tracking pixel. Yeah, they do, but they're not in money to suppress their ads. Like that's not how they're making money. Like they don't care about that. They have that pixel on there to say, hey, look, this ad got someone to buy, therefore you should spend more money on ads. It's not to say now suppress the ad. They don't care about that, but that's not what their game is, right? So thinking about them and what they're envisaged to do versus what you're trying to do and accomplish as a marketer are two very, very different things, right? And you've got to balance those things out. So that's a great example, great advice for marketers. Thank you very much for sharing that. And Kat, just thank you for your time today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime I can talk about Lifecycle and all the channels, happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me.